A capacity of around 500 is still the plan. That's despite concerns from the Fire Brigades Union over the vessel initially designed to house around 200 people. Meanwhile, Shadow Immigration Minister Stephen Kinnock says a Labour government would still have to house migrants in barges for short periods while tackling the backlog of asylum cases. A Labour government would also continue to place asylum seekers in former military bases for up to 6 months. Those who have been wrongly convicted of crimes will no longer have their living costs docked from their compensation payments. New guidance issued by Justice Secretary Alex Chalk comes into immediate effect from today. It follows the controversy sparked by the jailing of Andrew Malkinson, who spent 17 years behind bars for a crime he did not commit. A lawyer for Donald Trump says that any actions he may have taken after he lost the 2020 US election were aspirational asks. John Laro defended Mr. Trump's attempt to overturn the election by saying he was simply exercising his right to free speech when he asked lawmakers to defy the will of their voters. Donald Trump pleaded not guilty in court last week. He faces 4 federal charges in the election case. An iconic 18th century pub in Birmingham has been gutted by fire just days after it was sold to a private buyer. Firefighters were called to the Crooked House pub just before 10:45 last night. The blaze was extinguished, no one was injured. It's affectionately known to many as the Wonky Pub. That's due to its unusual angle where visitors would enjoy the illusion of coins and other objects seemingly rolling uphill along the bar. Police are appealing for anyone with information about the fire to get in touch. The renowned composer Carl Davis has died at the age of 86. He first came to prominence in the 1970s, and his work in the 1927 epic Napoleon was given a cinematic release in 2016. Among his many other credits was the BAFTA-winning musical score for the BBC's 1995 adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now though, it's time for Free Speech Nation.
Activist librarians hide books from the public, Elon Musk offers financial support for the cancelled, and the UK government wants an equality guru for the Falkland Islands. This is Free Speech Nation. To Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So, coming up on the show tonight, should corporations stay out of politics? I'm going to be talking to campaigner James Esses about how the bank Monzo and Costa Coffee have seemingly been captured by this new ideology. Should children as young as 5 be taught divisive theories as though they are fact? Anna Lufti from the Bad Law Project will be here to discuss their campaign against indoctrination in schools. And is the climate debate being censored? I'm going to be joined by journalist Kit Clarenberg to discuss the latest attempts by big tech and the government to curb discussion. And of course, myself and my fantastic panel will be answering questions from our wonderful studio audience. My guests this evening are Josh Howie and Jonathan Cogan. Looking very smart tonight, Jonathan.
Well, thank you. Last time I wore shorts and you didn't take
shorts and a T-shirt. You look like you just roughed up and you didn't really care.
This is black tie for me. This is me at my very
best. That's you at your poshest.
Yeah. And I've lost half a stone.
Yeah. Don't ask for applause.
I'm lying. I just wanted to clap.
What about you, Josh? You've had the worst holiday of the week.
Yeah, I've been camping for 4 days with the biggest storm.
But it was the biggest storm of of history or something.
Yeah, we've lost 3 of the kids.
Yeah. It's not a bad ratio, given that.
No, we've still got a couple. It's
exactly.
all fine.
That's why you had so many.
Yeah, absolutely.
You didn't have a beard before that trip, did you?
No, it was a long trip. But tonight, my wife and Jonathan's parents are in the audience somewhere in the audience.
Yeah. Can you spot them?
This is very exciting. Well, let's go into our audience now for some questions. Our first question is from Kim. Where is Kim? Hello, Kim.
It's my wife, Kim.
My parents.
Wife and parents, Kim. What's your question?
Can we all now be a bit more... Sorry. Can we all now be a bit more honest on Twitter or X now that Elon Musk will cover our legal fees?
Yeah, this is kind of amazing. So Musk has tweeted, I think it's just today he's tweeted, he said, if you were unfairly treated by your employer due to posting or liking something on this platform, we will fund your legal bill, no limit, please let us know.
Wow.
That's astonishing.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he's got a lot of money, but there's a lot of people who've lost their jobs over liking things.
I retweeted Talk TV the other day, and I'm in big trouble.
Oh, you're out here. But, I mean, do you think he can actually really carry... Do you know, the thing about this, it could be a real game changer, because he's got the money to do it. Most people don't go after these corporations when they hound people out of their jobs and fire them.
Yeah.
But, you know, in America, they do have the First Amendment. It matters to them, you know?
On the face of it, it sounds amazing, but, of course, how is he actually going to qualify who is going to work for what? But also, like, there are people criticising him.
Yes.
And he sort of banned them as well. So there's some level of hypocrisy that there always is.
OK, well, do you think he can do this? I mean, there have been people who've lost their jobs for liking tweets.
I mean, will he get a cut of the winnings if they win? Is that part of the business?
Oh, is that what it is?
I don't know. That's a pretty...
Well, he's trying to make Twitter profitable. So maybe this is the idea.
Well, for me personally, all my tweet problems are stuff I've said on this channel, so I don't think I'm going to get fired from here. It's all the other...
No, I think you're safe here.
Yeah.
On the whole.
I'm dealing with the come down of going viral last week. It's a whole thing.
You went viral last week?
Yeah, with that tweet when I was shirtless in the room and the whole...
All right, we won't go into that.
Moving on.
It sounds very dodgy. OK, well, look, we are going to be talking to Toby Young from the Free Speech Union later in the show about that very question. So it'll be interesting to hear his thoughts on that. But like I say, I think it could be a major game changer. OK, we're going to move on to a question from Brian now. Where's Brian? Hello, Brian.
Hello. In order to protect the US Constitution, should Donald Trump stand down?
Brian, do you think Donald Trump should stand down?
Oh, you put me on the spot now.
Well, if you're going to ask the question, you should have an idea yourself.
No, I don't think he should stand down. I think it's a witch hunt and democracy should prevail.
Interesting.
Brian, stand down.
Do you think it's a witch hunt, Jonathan?
Well, as a sort of an expert in foreign affairs, especially in America...
that's why you're here.
Yes, well, what do I think? Do I think he should stand down? Should they not wait till the trial is over and then find out? Because if he's proven innocent, then no. If he's proven guilty...
Look, we thought the 2016 election was weird enough. If he's in prison... This next one's going to be properly weird.
He's going to be president. He's going to be zooming in. Just,
I don't know what to make of that. I mean, I did think American politics couldn't get any more surreal. And now this is happening.
Well, this is what some people, Republicans, are sort of encouraging and saying, look, if you kind of stand down, we'll kind of make it all go away.
Yeah.
It depends on to what level you see him as a threat to democracy.
Yes.
It then affects the rest of the world.
OK, but what I don't understand about any of this is why it is that the Republicans haven't gone for DeSantis when it's absolutely clear from every metric that DeSantis can actually beat Biden but Trump can't. What's going on there?
Because there's loyalty, and I think that just being cynical is that a lot of those politicians are supporting Trump. They probably don't even like Trump that much, but they see that he has this fervent fan base, and then they're not willing to upset them.
Yeah, but the advantage of DeSantis, firstly, is not being in prison. And I would have thought that's... Yet, OK, well, there might be something about him we don't know.
Well, if you're a Trump guy, that's the thing, you're a sort of Trump guy for life. He's a cult of personality, and there's just so many people who are in on him to the very end. They're ride or die, and so that's why they stick with him. It's a strange world.
It is a strange... Brian, I hope that answered your question. Probably not. But anyway, we're going to move on to John now. Where's John? Hi, John.
Hi, Andrew. How are you doing?
I'm mediocre. Yeah. I know that was just a pleasantry. You didn't want an actual answer.
Well, not really, no.
No, OK. We'll talk afterwards. OK.
Fair enough. Would you move to the Falkland Islands for 43 grand a year?
Well, you know what? I've always wanted to go to the Falkland Islands, but this is a job, right? I've read about this job, 43 grand a year, for a diversity equality guru. Now, the thing about the Falklands is, like, there's 3,500 people live there. There's 500,000 sheep. So, is this about the sheep? Are they going to bring in other kinds of animals?
Are they white sheep or black?
Well, that's what I want to know. Is that what this is about? Do we really need an equality guru on the Falklands? Don't we just need another army?
I think it's a great idea. In fact, I think we should send all the equality gurus to the Falklands.
That's actually a good idea.
I think it makes sense to have an equality guru there because it's actually an island, like an Argentinian island that identifies as English, is it?
I think that's what it is.
Yeah,
there is an identity issue going on there.
I don't know what
anyone watching it from the Falklands will not find that funny.
No? Why should I do it the other way around then?
It's kind of a sensitive
all
issue.
3,000 of them.
Yeah, I know.
Come at me. No, I'm joking, please don't.
It's very strange, isn't it? It's like, and it's a big industry, the diversity industry.
It's a huge industry, but we are seeing a lot of companies now cutting, like Disney cut their Disney diversity person. So a lot of companies are realising they're just chucking money here
But how's it going to work on the Falklands? Or, like, are they going to go into, like, Beryl's corner shop and say there aren't enough gay people working here? Do something about it, Beryl.
Well, Beryl needs to sort it out, to be honest.
Yeah, she's a nasty piece of work. OK, we're going to move on to the next question from Lee. Where is Lee? Hello, Lee.
Hello.
Hello.
Does, and indeed should, free speech on campus include Islamic extremism?
Yeah, this was a bit nuts. So there's been this story that's broken, and there's these students that have been told to fight an apocalyptic war against Iran's enemies. And this is a London-based student organisation. What they'd done is that they'd hosted these talks over Zoom with, well, members of the Iranian paramilitary group, the regime's Revolutionary Guard, who, let's put it bluntly, are very anti-Semitic. Yeah. So these talks, they deny the Holocaust. They said that Jewish people invented homosexuality.
One time.
OK, so they were half right. But, what, you know, explain this to me, Josh.
Well, they want to end the era of Jews as well. Is the
So what? Right. So we know that there are Islamic extremists in Iran that feel this way. This is not new news.
But to have a connection to the UK...
Right. Why would you, as a student group, invite those people to give a talk?
Because they're fundamentalists themselves, or they're being allowed to be influenced by. So this is actually uncovered by the Jewish Chronicle.
Yeah.
I am the TV reviewer for the Jewish Chronicle. I give Free Speech Nation 5 stars.
There we go.
There it is. Sorted. But yeah, this is a real serious thing. There has been a movement within the government to try and ban and to outlaw the Iranian Guards as a terrorist organisation, because there's proof of them going all over the world, setting up these terrorist schemes to kill their enemies, which are basically Jewish people. And this is terrifying. But also, you would think that that the official institutions of this country would have a grasp on our student base now. It was all in the 90s, and sort of seeing it was a lot of Islamist groups just allowed to sort of behave unchecked. Yeah, that led to the terrorism that...
But isn't this the weird thing? Because, you know, they're so hot on, like, oh, if you invite a gender-critical feminist in, that person's got to be stopped and everything. Yeah. But it's OK to get some sort of nutcase from Iran to talk about how...
But they're saying that men and women are different, so it's OK.
Right, oh, I see. So they're on the right side of history. I mean, this is incredible, isn't it?
I mean, as David Baddiel said, it's a bit of a Jews don't count moment, would you say? Like, the standards are not held in the same way there, and yeah, it's just...
Well, no, I'd say most people are outraged that these people are saying this.
Well, I only just found out about it, OK?
So you haven't had time to get outraged?
No, but I will.
Right, you will.
I'm starting to see...
Good, Jonathan. OK, let's get another question now from Andrew. Andrew, hello.
Hi. Should Great Western Railway decide what I can view on the internet?
Yeah, this was a weird one. So you know the campaign group Sex Matters, and you will know them because Helen Joyce has been on this show, Maya Forstater has been on this show, so the women effectively who campaign for women's rights. And they say that biological sex matters. It's a reality. Now, the Great Western Railway, you know when you go online on the train, you know, it's normally quite shoddy, but you can just about get online. They blocked the Sex Matters website, and they claimed it was because it repeated the word sex on the website. But when users actually tried to get to it, it came up with, no, this is hateful terrorist material.
Well, that's how I have sex. Yeah.
So that's how you view sex, that's true. But, you know, so therefore they're lying, aren't they, about this idea of that it's just because the word sex is repeated?
They may be lying about the exact reason. It could be that it was this AI that banished it. It could also be that another institution has been captured. I mean, I am still somewhat amazed that someone actually managed to get the internet access at all.
Yeah, it's really incredible.
I'm sort of angry about that.
Yeah,
well,
but I mean, it's a weird... But I mean, it could just be, couldn't it, just like some young member of staff who, you know, thinks that, you know, to acknowledge biological reality is the worst thing in the world, therefore we've got to block everything. The same kids who basically hide the books in Waterstones.
Yeah, but they'll allow the Iranian Guards to sprout their...
Yeah, as we've said, Josh, that's a different thing. You know, they understand.
No, it is rigged, but it's all too easy to think exactly that it is one or two people who are just going, oh, yeah, no, these are the websites...
Well, that's what I sort of hope it is.
Yeah. But no, I hope it is the AI. I hope that it isn't, because there are too many of these institutions. They need to look at who they're employing, certainly in their sort of their website areas, because they keep on getting the big company in trouble. Yeah. By sort of being allowed to access this stuff unfettered.
This does keep happening, doesn't it?
It does. So I do wonder if this was... Is the website almost too... Because obviously it's quite an established organisation, but is it too niche? Because there must be a million things that they've banned before it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's right. It would be interesting to check other websites to see what else they've banned and whether they ban actual terrorist websites.
So if they've actually banned that, then I think that's incredibly censorial?
Yes. Censorial is actually the correct
Thank you,
term.
And he's my teacher.
Your parents are cavelling over there.
But this is interesting. It's a bit like the way Twitter used to be before Elon Musk turned up. And you would have gender-critical feminists kicked off. But the Taliban have multiple accounts, and they can, you know, sell Taliban merchandise, and that's okay.
Saying double standards.
Yeah, it's absolutely
Everything
bonkers.
is ridiculous.
OK, well, look, after the break on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be talking about whether corporations ought to stay out of politics. Do not go anywhere.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So, Monzo Bank is under fire after their staff members denied Jeremy Hunt a bank account and criticised individuals such as J.K. Rowling and Jacob Rees-Mogg. Employees at the Challenger Bank dubbed the Harry Potter author vile in a series of messages that have been described as extreme. Evidence has also reportedly emerged of staff holding gender-critical beliefs in contempt. Employees have joked about starting a turf war. LGB Alliance have been accused of hate speech, and other staff members have quit because of the stress. So to get more on this, I'm joined by the writer and commentator James Esses. Welcome to the show. Thank you. So James, you broke this story about Monzo, and this is what they call a Slack channel, isn't it, where people within a company talk to each other, but it's still within the parameters of the official company behaviour, isn't it?
It is. It's the internal communications channel. Every member of staff can actually access it, read through different threads that have been started.
Yes.
And yes, as you just alluded to, there are some pretty, horrible things being said on these Slack channels about all manner of people.
And Monzo is people might not know it's a bank. It's one of these
Online bank.
It's an online bank because it sounds like a Muppet bank or something. It doesn't sound real, does it? But it's very, very popular. Now, the staff who are in there talking about, branding people hateful bigots, TERFs, etc. What kind of atmosphere does that create within any kind of company?
Oh, it's ironic that, Monzo claimed to be an inclusive and welcoming space, but actually what they're doing is making certain groups, certain members of staff feel completely alienated and excluded. And the problem is this comes from the top down. I was sent a list of threads, screenshots from this Slack channel. I didn't choose to name individuals because I don't want to cause a pylon, but some of the individuals using terms such as TERF in a disparaging way were senior HR directors in the company, and so that sets the standard for the other staff members.
Well, that's a real problem, isn't it? If you're a member of staff lower down on the food chain, as it were, and you don't agree with the boss who's using terms like that, that puts you in a difficult position. Basically, it invites you to just shut up, doesn't it?
Oh, completely, and that's exactly what's happened. Again, I've spoken to some now former staff members at Monzo who said they simply had to leave. They couldn't stand being there anymore and having their views and beliefs vilified in this way.
Now, Monzo might say that, well, these weren't external communications, we haven't put this out anywhere. So what's the harm? Isn't this their free speech to just share their opinions? What do you make of that?
Well, again, I'd turn to the fact that they're alienating members of staff, but we also need to consider the impact on customers, because if these are the views held by staff, in what way are they treating their customers differently? I mean, this whole thing came out because a member of the public came across some LinkedIn posts that Monzo were putting out about Pride Month, and he challenged some of them. And then he discovered that Monzo staff were looking at his LinkedIn profile quite frequently, and he put in a subject access request, and he discovered that there were Monzo staff gossiping about him on their internal channels, and he's a prospective customer of the bank.
Now, we've seen this a lot recently with, for instance, Coutts Bank and the Nigel Farage case, where banks are effectively deciding which customers they have on the basis of their political opinions. Now, there's been, obviously, as you've seen, a big backlash from all sides of the political spectrum, which I think is very encouraging. But why is it that this particular ideological worldview has so infected these financial institutions? Is it just that the people at the top don't understand the issues?
I think that's definitely part of it, but I think so much of it is just, I mean, they call it woke capitalism, but it's basically, virtue signalling in pursuit of profit. They think by ticking this box, by demonstrating that they are an inclusive, employer, an inclusive service provider, that will garner them more business. But increasingly what we're seeing is them putting off customers from joining them in the first place. So it's going to backfire, and it already is backfiring.
It's also very simplistic, isn't it? Because I think what they don't understand is that progressive pride flag alienates a lot of gay people, a lot of feminists. It's seen as a very regressive thing within activist movements. But they haven't even had the debate, have they? They don't want the discussion.
No, they don't. It's particularly interesting that mainstream views are being targeted. I mean, if we look at the Coutts dossier with Nigel Farage, in some of the things that mentioned in there, Brexit, well, the majority of those that voted in favour of Brexit. And equally, on the gender-critical stuff, we know that the majority of the population of this country believe that sex is binary and immutable. So to target mainstream views, I mean, what hope do people with minority views have of being discriminated against?
That's a particularly strange one, because in that dossier it mentioned that Nigel Farage had retweeted a Ricky Gervais joke. He's quite popular. So, I mean, if you're going to punish people for the jokes that they laugh at, I mean, that's just outright authoritarianism, isn't it?
Well, this is the utter subjectivity of all of this. Who are these individuals to make these subjective moral judgments about, any one of us? It flies in the face of open democracy, free speech and all the rest of it.
And I would have thought that if these major corporations and banks had been sort of flying the pride flag 15, 20 years ago when it meant something, when we didn't have equal rights for gay people, that would have been something. But they didn't do that, did they? And you'll notice today they fly the pride flag in London, everywhere. They don't do it in Saudi Arabia, in their outlets in the Middle East, where to be gay is illegal. And actually to fly that flag would actually make a difference there. But they won't do it because it's going to harm their profits, right?
Correct, it will cost them money. All they care about is the bottom line. But I think many of them are using their past failures, which we can acknowledge, as justification for doing what they're doing now. But the problem is they've gone way off the spectrum with this.
Yes. Now, you also broke a story recently about Costa Coffee. Do you want to tell us what happened there?
Yeah, so an image surfaced. It was sent to me from this Costa Coffee van from a Pride event in Brighton, and on it was a cartoon character of what I'm going to say was a woman with double mastectomy scars.
We can actually see the image there on the screen at the moment.
It is blue hair as well, for whatever reason that is. But yes, I mean, you can clearly see those are double mastectomy scars, and the fact that it was done as part of Pride Month, furthers that. A horrific image for a company.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because, Costa claim that this image is just about inclusivity, and they're saying they're being trans-friendly. But the idea of double mastectomy scars, I mean, a lot of women go through breast cancer, and they go through that procedure. It's very painful and very traumatic. And to see the mutilation of healthy breasts, which is implied here, as being somehow a positive, uplifting thing, I mean, that's very insulting, isn't it?
Oh, yes, it's seen as just some sort of aesthetic change, whereas, as you say, some women have had the breast literally forced away from them because they were unhealthy, but now people are given the option to have healthy parts of their body removed. And the way that these trans activists talk about particularly female bodies. I mean, I came across one person online who said, well, it doesn't matter, you know, if somebody, a trans person, regrets having their breasts removed because they can always have implants again at a later stage. I mean, this is the way they're talking about the human body.
That is quite incredible. And we're dealing with young people here as well, aren't we? I mean, a lot of young people who've had this procedure. And in America, some people are very young. You know, we're talking teenagers. You know, it's really not... there's all sorts of reasons why we should oppose this, isn't there?
Oh, yes. I mean, I came across a surgeon in the States who's performing double mastectomies on girls as young as 13. But imagine what message this is sending to a young girl who looks at that Costa coffee van, might hate their body, might hate their changing breasts, they're going through puberty. And here's a message to them that if you don't like a part of your body, you can just get rid of it. I mean, you know, it's atrocious. And it's, again, encouraging children down an irreversible medical pathway.
And again, we're seeing it quite a lot. I saw it recently in a Ben Sherman store, a photograph of a young woman who's had her breasts removed, clear scars, glamorising it, as you say. And, you know, and when you're, like you say, when you're dealing with young girls who are going through puberty, why can't we have the debate about why girls are feeling that they want to identify out of womanhood, out of femaleness?
Well, I mean, this is precisely it. And from a therapeutic perspective, if somebody's unhappy with their body, which is quite common, I'd say there's most of us out there have some insecurities, and particularly young girls going through puberty, the conversation should be around how can we instill some confidence in them, some self-esteem, not cutting off parts of themselves.
OK, so is there anything that we can do when it comes to these corporations and these banks who seem to think that they can just push this particular ideological line without a discussion, without a debate, even though they're highly contested and, as you say, a lot of these ideas that they're pushing are not shared by the vast majority of the country? Can we have a voice against this? Is there anything we can do?
Well, I think boycotting is one way to go, and that seems to have naturally come about itself. I mean, there was a massive call for a boycott of Costa Coffee after this emerged. I noticed that Coca-Cola, who's their owner, their share price dropped on the day that this all came out. You know, it's different to a historic boycott, which tended to be, well, I don't like a particular country's political stance, so I'm going to boycott produce from that country. This is very much, these companies are sending a message to us, actually. They don't respect our views, our opinions. We're clearly not welcome in these stores with the views that we have, and therefore we're going to vote with our feet. And that's the only way that these companies are going to get the message, because all they care about is profit and nothing else.
James Esses, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. So, a spokesperson from Monzo has said, our ambition is to make money work for everyone, which means that we're politically neutral and personal views play no part in our policies and decision-making, including eligibility for a Monzo account. Any suggestion otherwise is categorically untrue. We have a statement also from Costa Coffee. They said, at Costa Coffee, we celebrate the diversity of our customers, team members and partners. We want everyone that interacts with us to experience the inclusive environment that we create, to encourage people to feel welcomed, free and unashamedly proud to be themselves. The mural in its entirety showcases and celebrates inclusivity. So we've got more still to come on Free Speech Nation, but first, it's time for the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So we have seen quite a few showers across the UK for many today, though it has been dry for some. And as we look towards the new week, this area of high pressure will just come across the UK very briefly, bringing some settled weather across the south. But back to tonight's weather, and showers will slowly ease, becoming more confined to northern and western areas. Clear spells elsewhere combined with light winds will make for quite a cool night tonight. So temperatures in rural areas dropping into mid or even low single figures. It will make for a fresh but bright start to the new week with plenty of sunshine around, though we will start to see that cloud bubbling up, allowing showers to develop through the morning. Showers will be mostly across northern areas. They might just creep into East Anglia for a time, with that high pressure keeping things mostly dry across the south. We're feeling pretty pleasant in the sunshine with highs of 22 or locally 23 in the southeast. Now, as we go into Tuesday, an area of low pressure moves in from the west. Nothing as developed as what we saw on Saturday, but will bring quite a bit of cloud, rain and drizzle, especially to western areas. A drier and brighter day across the north. And as we look towards midweek, that drier and more settled weather looking to stay around with those temperatures on the rise.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
After the break on Free Speech Nation, should children as young as 5 be taught divisive theories in schools as though they are fact? Don't go anywhere.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Later in the show, I'm going to be turning agony uncle with the help of my panel, Josh Howie and Jonathan Cogan, to help you deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. So please, email us at gbviews@gbnews.com and we will try our best to answer your issues. Dr. Anna Lutfi and the Bad Law Project are suing the government for trying to teach children as young as 5 divisive issues. Families of some of the children have come together to file a class action lawsuit against the UK government and the Department of Education. They're calling for personal, social, health and economic education, known as PSHE, to be abolished in schools and for parents to have the right to withdraw their children from lessons dealing with sex, health and relationships. I'm delighted to say that Equality and Human Rights barrister Dr. Anna Lutfi joins me now. Thanks very much for joining me. Can I ask you firstly about what's going on in schools? Because I've seen some materials from various parents in terms of sex education. Some of it has been quite shocking, actually, but I think still people deny that there is any kind of problem here.
Yeah, I think when you introduced us now, the topic, you talked about the Department for Education
teaching children in schools. That is not the issue. What's the issue is that we have rogue actors who are posing as charities, what we call the third sector. These organisations, they are completely unregulated. They produce the materials. Sometimes they produce the materials outside of the national jurisdiction. So we'll find, for example, certain local education authorities using materials that have been taken from the United States.
Yes.
And there is no oversight on the content of these materials. And what we are finding is that advocacy groups are choosing, their own pick and mix ideas of what children should or shouldn't know. There's no oversight. Parents are not really invited to be part of that discussion. And what we do see is that some of these materials clearly engage both the civil law and the criminal law in terms of their suitability for children at certain age groups.
So there's the element of the sexual explicit aspect. I mean, I have a friend who's a parent of a boy of 6. She showed me some of the materials, and she said when she tried to have her son removed, they told her you can't, the government says this is compulsory. So although it is an outside agent providing the materials, the school seems to believe that the government is making them do it. Do you think that's possible?
Yes, 100%. I've seen the materials myself. I think we've lost, thanks to the third sector, which has now seized complete control of education in this area called PSHE, we have lost control of regulation in the same manner as we would lose control if there had been a military coup and we had a junta taking control of the schools. We're simply not allowed to have the conversation about what these materials are for, what the purpose of them is, but more importantly, we have, as a nation, speaking about the UK, we have lost any discernment about what age groups are suitable for certain kinds of materials. We simply have stopped having that conversation. All materials provided by the third sector to schools are considered to be appropriate because the third sector has appointed itself experts in the area. And therefore, if something is considered age inappropriate by a parent or a teacher, but the experts, the third sector says, no, this is absolutely fine, that becomes the end of the conversation. And any parent, any teacher and any young person who has qualms, as we saw in the school in East Sussex, where 2 13-year-old girls raised questions about what they were being taught in PSHE, they're actually insulted and called bigots.
Yes. So it's not just about the age-inappropriate materials. There's also the ideological aspect to this. So children are being taught, and I've seen materials that prove this. In a number of schools, children are being taught, often by outside agents, that there are over 100 genders, or that we each have an innate sexed soul, a gendered soul. This is effectively a quasi-religious belief taught as fact. Now, a couple of years ago, Kemi Badenoch stood up in Parliament and said that the teaching of critical race theory in schools was against the law. Is the teaching of gender identity ideology as fact also against the law?
It is, and let's be very clear, this isn't just about gender identity, although that is the issue that the parents that have come to me have raised. But let's be very clear, the Education Act 1996 is very explicit that the promotion of any idea that is contentious is unlawful. And by promotion, what the statute says is that you cannot present an idea that is contentious as if it is the only idea or the only version or the only worldview available on that topic.
Right.
There has to be a dispassionate, fair and non-partisan presentation of the facts. That would apply to a whole range of issues.
So a teacher could say, there are many people who believe in such a thing as gender identity. There are a minority of the country, but there are people who believe that. Most people don't believe that. But let's have a discussion about that. That would be OK. That would be
lawful.
That would be lawful.
But that isn't what is happening. In fact, I can cite materials. My favourite example is the one of the gender galaxy, which, when you talk about religious cults, we have a gender galaxy in one of the sets of materials that I saw, where the gender sun is circled by all of these different gender identities, little planets going around, and it's a huge, glorious galaxy with all of these exciting planets. And in the background, in the distance, there's this sad little sun called the sex assigned at birth galaxy, and there are 2 little tiny sad planets going around that sun in the background, and they are male and female. The messaging is really clear, but it uses pseudoscientific, astronomical imagery to present the idea that in the universe there is the exciting galaxy that is all these choices of gender identities, and then there's the boring male and female assigned at birth. I mean, if you are a young person and you would like to be cool, or you'd like to be interesting, or you'd like to be different, this is a clear pathway for you to have an identity that signals you out as interesting. And unfortunately, we know, as James, my dear friend James, who was just on now, as he pointed out, we know that this links children into pathways, social and medical, which are irreversible and which do result in mutilated bodies.
To what extent are the likes of Stonewall and Mermaids responsible for this? You know, those are two groups that do believe in gender identity ideology. They are effectively religious groups now. But I remember seeing a leaked presentation from Mermaids, which was a training presentation in which they showed a spectrum of male and female according to Barbie on one end of the spectrum and G.I. Joe on the other, basically reinforcing what I would say are 1950s stereotypes of what it means to be male and female to young people. Is that the problem?
Yes. I mean, Stonewall and Mermaids are two actors. There are many other charities as well. We need to understand as a country the relationship that they have with the Department for Education, why the Department for Education is consulting such people and not consulting people with a different view. But there is another issue here, and that is the gender... The Equality Act 2010 has a list of protected characteristics on the basis of which you cannot discriminate. One of those characteristics is gender reassignment. As a lawyer, the only way I can know what gender reassignment actually means in law is if I go to something called the Gender Recognition Act 2004, which makes it clear that that is a procedure that is available only to persons of 18 and over.
Right.
So therefore, the question is, why have Mermaids and Stonewall decided to redesign the law according to their fantasy world, where gender reassignment is a process that is something that anybody at any age, even in the womb, can engage in, and you know, anybody who questions that is a bigot, and you're not allowed to raise very basic safeguarding concerns about what might happen to somebody under the age of 18 who starts the process of interfering with their biology.
People are going to be astonished by this because Stonewall has been accused in the past of representing the law as they would like it to be.
That's exactly what they've done.
Now, how can that be the case, and why hasn't the government called them up on it? And why are they so embedded? I mean, certainly in like the SNP, in the Welsh government, they seem to be very much embedded. I mean, the Welsh government is pushing forward all sorts of these kinds of PSHE programmes which teach gender ideology as though it is fact.
Well, because we live in a society which is not only anti-intellectual, which means that sound bites rule, but we live in a society that is also driven by repetition of slogans and mantras. If you say something often enough, it becomes reality. As a lawyer, it doesn't matter to me what people say, it's what the law puts into black and white. And I'm finding that even lawyers, even government ministers are disregarding the black letter of the law, and they are simply repeating mantras that you hear on social media. Trans women are women. You know, gender identity is a protected characteristic. These are not legal matters. These are not legally based arguments. They are mantras. They are advertising slogans, and they are adopted by powerful corporations in order to promote ways of life and products that profit them.
Of course, activists would say, but, you know, at school with young people, it's very important to teach them that if children are struggling with their gender, or if children are gay or are from a minority group, that they do need protecting and they need to be shown that we live in an inclusive world. What would you say to that?
I would say that we struggle with a lot of things, but we cannot as a society adopt a position where we say anything that you struggle with, society will embrace your desire to be something other than you are. Because if that is true, many young people struggle with suicide ideation, so therefore we should affirm suicide in young people wherever somebody wishes to self-harm. Anorexics who wish to, you know, starve themselves to death, or people who wish to cut their arms with razor blades, are expressing an inner struggle and an idealistic notion of escape from their reality. It is not the business of schools to facilitate that self-harm, and we have to be, as a country and a culture and as a moral society, discerning about what we embrace, what we encourage and what we don't. The fact that a child is struggling is not in and of itself justification for the entire society to facilitate a pathway to self-destruction.
So it looks like, from your perspective, the law is the way through this.
Absolutely.
That's going to just challenging it in the courts, clarifying the law, all of that.
And the law is clear. We don't even
It's already clear.
It's very clear.
Yes.
I believe in the rule of law. Unfortunately, many of my colleagues in the legal profession seem to have abandoned that idea and find it quite old-fashioned. But I believe in the rule of law, and I believe that the Gender Recognition Act is very clear that gender reassignment is a process that is available for people of 18 or over. And anybody promoting the idea that there's something other that the law says that there's something called gender identity and you can have it at age 3, age 5, age 7, age 9 is a liar. And the question we should be asking is, why are they lying?
Yes.
And I would say the old-fashioned profit motive is one particular avenue that we could go down, but there may be others as well, and I find those very sinister.
Very quickly, Dr. Lofty, how can people support?
Bad Law Project, go to our website. We also have a case that parents are bringing against the Department for Education to hold the Department for Education to account for the fact that it has neglected to address this issue, and that has resulted in lots of young people self-harming, socially transitioning, sometimes medically transitioning. They have a case. You can find the crowdfunder at Asleep at the Wheel, democracy3.org. Please support us because the parents need protection from cost risks.
Dr. Anna Lutfi, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, after the break on Free Speech Nation, is the climate change debate being censored? Don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Investigative journalist Kit Clarenberg has written an article for Unheard claiming that Wikipedia and the UK government are attempting to censor the climate debate and that pandemic-era disinformation tactics are being restored. So, is open debate under threat? Kit Clarenberg joins me now. Welcome to the show. Kit, can I start by asking you about your article? What is actually going on?
Okay, sure. So in mid-2022, there was a communications project was launched very, very quietly, I might add, under the auspices of United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 13, which is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. This is a concerted effort to police Wikipedia's most viewed entries related to climate change. So they reflect UN-approved perspectives on climate change and how it can and should be dealt with by individuals and governments and organisations like the UN. There's an official press release which got no coverage in the mainstream media, which talks about how paid editors will work with UN-approved experts to ensure that internet search results reflect what the UN wants them to say, which is deeply disconcerting. There is a broad near consensus that climate change is happening, but how this should and indeed can be responded to is far from settled. But the UN appears to believe that it is possessed of all the facts on that front. I mean, it's incumbent to note that at a World Economic Forum panel discussion last autumn, a high-ranking UN official named Melissa Fleming was openly boasting about how the UN was directly coordinating with major tech firms and social media networks to ensure that, yes, only UN-approved narratives and UN-approved content in respect of climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic was seen by users. That is deeply troubling, because as we saw over and over again throughout the pandemic, the UN and the World Economic Forum, along with the World Health Organization, they were far from dispassionate, objective purveyors of science. They engaged in direct advocacy for measures like lockdowns and school closures and other once-in-a-lifetime, hitherto unproven and untested measures, the efficacy of which was far from clear. As we're seeing increasingly now, there was recently a Scottish government report which found that lockdowns were completely useless and inflicted misery completely needlessly on residents of Scotland. The British government's own investigation into COVID-19 isn't over yet, although Mike Hancock, with tears in his eyes, did say that we didn't lock down hard enough and quick enough, and that next time, because he knows there'll be a next time, we will. Putting all these facts together, it's quite clear that the lessons of COVID have actually not been learned, and governments are gearing up to do the same. Now, what underlines that even more starkly is that a few months ago, there's an organisation known as the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, the ISD. This is a counter-disinformation organisation which receives funding from a variety of Western governments and foundations such as Bill and Melinda Gates. I think they're divorced now. In theory, they are tasked with rooting out disinformation narratives on and offline and purveyors of them. I mean, in reality, this amounts to arm's length state censorship. It will seek to marginalise and ostracise and demonise anti-establishment perspectives on particular topics in keeping with the interests and objectives of its funders. Now, very bizarrely, in March 2020, right when the British government passed the Coronavirus Act and the UK went into lockdown, ISD was given a contract to track how the COVID was being exploited for the purposes of disinformation by extremist actors. Quite clearly, the British government thought that this was absolutely inevitable for reasons unclear. And it very quickly started publishing reports which found a clear synergy between far-right perspectives and any and all criticism of lockdown, or indeed other coronavirus preventative measures such as vaccine passports and mandates, which were highly controversial. It was quite clear that the purpose here was to bludgeon people into accepting these measures while demonising anyone questioning their necessity, of which there are a large number of completely non-extreme people at the time. I mean, ISD went so far as to, in December 2021, when coincidentally the British government was mulling yet another COVID lockdown, to publish a report claiming that people who opposed mask mandates and vaccine passports were a terrorist risk. This particular breed of terrorists.
I'm going to have to interrupt you, I'm afraid. I wish we had much more time, but we actually don't. But you're the only guest I've ever had who's only had one question. We will come back to Kit, no doubt, in some other week, because there's an awful lot to explore there, but it is time for a quick break. Please don't go away, however, because there's lots more to come. Between now and 9 o'clock, is the English curriculum pale, male and stale? And Elon Musk promises to fund legal bills if users are treated unfairly by bosses for activity on his social media platform. See you in a few minutes.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So we have seen quite a few showers across the UK for many today, though it has been dry for some. And as we look towards the new week, this area of high pressure will just come across the UK very briefly, bringing some settled weather across the south. But back to tonight's weather, and showers will slowly ease, becoming more confined to northern and western areas. Clear spells elsewhere combined with light winds will make for quite a cool night tonight. So temperatures in rural areas dropping into mid or even low single figures. It will make for a fresh but bright start to the new week with plenty of sunshine around, though we will start to see that cloud bubbling up, allowing showers to develop through the morning. Showers will be mostly across northern areas. They might just creep into East Anglia for a time, with that high pressure keeping things mostly dry across the south. We're feeling pretty pleasant in the sunshine with highs of 22 or locally 23 in the southeast. Now, as we go into Tuesday, an area of low pressure moves in from the west. Nothing as developed as what we saw on Saturday, but will bring quite a bit of cloud, rain and drizzle, especially to western areas. A drier and brighter day across the north. And as we look towards midweek, that drier and more settled weather looking to stay around with those temperatures on the rise.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
There's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, and Josh, Harry, Jonathan Cogan and I are about to answer some more questions from our wonderful audience. But first, let's get the news headlines from Rory Smith.
Thank you very much, Andrew. The first asylum seekers are to be housed on the Bibi Stockholm barge in the coming days. Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick says around 50 people will enter the vessel in Portland Port in Dorset this week. Mr Jenrick says increasing the numbers on the barge to the capacity of around 500 is still the plan. That's despite concerns from the Fire Brigades Union over the vessel initially designed to house around 200 people. Meanwhile, Shadow Immigration Minister Stephen Kinnock says a Labour government would still have to house migrants in barges for short periods while tackling the backlog of asylum cases. A Labour government would also continue to place asylum seekers in former military bases for up to 6 months. Well, in other news, those who have been wrongfully convicted of crimes will no longer have their living costs docked from their compensation payments. New guidance issued by Justice Secretary Alex Chalk comes into immediate effect as of today. It follows the controversy sparked by the jailing of Andrew Malkinson, who spent 17 years behind bars for a crime he did not commit. Donald Trump has targeted the federal judge assigned to the case, charging him with seeking to overturn the 2020 presidential election. In a social media post, Trump said, "There is no way I can get a fair trial with the judge assigned." No formal request has been filed with the court. Well, it comes as a lawyer for Donald Trump says that the former president was simply exercising his right to free speech when he asked lawmakers to defy the will of their voters. Trump pleaded not guilty in court last week. The Health Security Agency is investigating after at least 57 triathletes fell ill after taking part in swimming competitions off the Wearside coast in Sunderland. Around 2,000 people took part in the UK leg of the World Triathlon Championship Series last weekend. The Health Security Agency says it is asking those with symptoms to send a sample for testing to determine the cause of the illness. Northumbrian Water says there has been no sewage discharges at the beach since 2021. An iconic 18th century pub in Birmingham has been gutted by fire just days after it was sold to a private buyer. Firefighters were called to the Crooked House pub, known locally as the Wonky Pub, just before 10:45 last night. The blaze was extinguished, no one was injured. Police are appealing for anyone with information to get in touch. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now though, back to Free Speech Nation.
To Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So let's get some questions from our audience. Our first question is from a Stephen. Where is Stephen? Hello.
Hello. Should you face police action from a leaflet?
A leaflet. OK, so this is David Davis, Welsh Secretary, who's been reported to police over this leaflet, and it was considered... Well, the leaflet was entitled Gypsy and Traveller Site Coming to Your Area Soon. Josh, is that offensive?
Well, it depends on how good a film it is.
Yeah. I mean, is the phrase gypsy an offensive... Because I hear On some websites which I check, they say this isn't a legitimate term for a certain community. Yes. Other people say it's a slur. It's kind of difficult, isn't it?
Well, yes, it is difficult, but a group of people have been upset by this. The implication is that they're terrible people, and why would anybody want them near them?
That's the implication of the leaflet.
That's the implication of the leaflet, yeah.
So, of course, they would deny that that was what they were implying.
Yeah, but... and Labour have sort of also come out and said, well, there are, people... have a legitimate claim both ways to look at it. But it's about the sensitivity of language, and there's nothing wrong with not offending people. So
what do you think, Jonathan? So one of the questions on the leaflet was, would you like to see a traveller site next to your house? Would you?
Would I?
I'm putting you on the spot. No, that's not fair. Tell me what you think about that phrasing. Is that offensive?
I mean, it is. I guess the implication is that would you? Is that, or you don't want to? So that's kind of why...
It's a rhetorical thing.
Yeah, it's rhetorical, but you wouldn't ask it. It's like... You wouldn't ask it if you weren't trying to make a point, I suppose. So
I suppose.
Yeah, but I don't... I mean, you could say that it's not particularly kind, but I don't think that is illegal, is it? Or
no, well, I think the accusation is of racism.
Right, OK. And that would be illegal because it's in print and that's a hate crime.
I don't think it would be illegal, but the question is, like, is it fair to... Should we be bothered with this kind of thing, or do you think it merits an investigation?
I think that they should look at it, but then is it Suella Braverman? Someone's come out... I think it's Suella Braverman's come out and said that the police shouldn't be wasting their time looking at this stuff.
Sure.
It's a tricky one.
It is a tricky one. OK, well, we'll get another question from Linda. Where's Linda? Are you Linda? No? There are no Lindas in here. OK. Emma. All right, let's go for Emma instead. Hi, Emma.
That's my mum's name, funnily enough, but...
Well, there we go. There's a psychic element going on here.
Absolutely. OK, good evening. Why are political parties calling... Why are political parties calling for under-18s to have access to puberty blockers?
OK, puberty blockers. Well, this is to do with Sinn Féin, of course. So Sinn Féin have called for new legislation for Northern Ireland to guarantee that puberty blockers will be available to young teens, even after what's happened in Scotland, even after what's going on. Why don't these political parties see what's going on and...
Well, my question is, what does available mean? Does that mean that, like, anyone who just asks them can immediately get them, or there has to be
It's not clear.
Yeah.
It's not clear, but it feels as though Sinn Féin have sort of been caught by this ideology as well.
Yes.
And when a political party gets caught by the ideology, they cease to sort of function as they're meant to, and they just become conduits.
Well, you
for the
mentioned
ideology.
Scotland, well, that's completely, blown up in their face, essentially, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Hey,
exactly.
wrong language, mate.
What do you, I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, isn't it weird?
I think it's brilliant. I think it's hilarious.
Really?
I think Sinn Féin being captured by this ideology. Finally, we're going to be... I mean, a trans rights activist going to be taking this to the next new level. It's like if anybody can sort of fight either way. I mean, had they finally met their match, the two of them?
It's going to be very strange, isn't it, in terms of the Northern Irish political climate? If you've got Sinn Féin that are captured by this very reactionary ideology, you've got the DUP captured by a very different
and now
type of
they're captured by trans ideology as well.
Yeah, well, OK. Well, look, we'll move on from that because it's a minefield. Anyway, we're going to go on to a question from Donald. Where's Donald? Lucy. We've got none of the names right tonight. We're just guessing the names. Doesn't matter. I'll call you what I want. All right, Donald, what's your question?
Hi. Hiya. My question is, do you think that the English curriculum is pale, male and stale?
OK, Lucy, that's a very good question. And this is because of Allen's school in Dulwich, named after Edward Allen, wasn't the actor? Sure. And... they've been told to study books by various writers. They're expanding. They don't want pale, male and stale novelists. They want LGBTQ novelists.
Well, is that effectively saying they don't want novels from white old men?
Basically.
Isn't that a little bit on the racist side? Is that not?
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
I didn't know you spoke French.
I hate the French, but that's not racist. No, I don't.
So this is an odd one, isn't it? Because basically the school is... I mean, I read a statement from the head mistress... Oh, no, so the head of English at the school, sort of saying, yeah, she was using all the buzzwords, all the jargon, sort of saying, we don't want to inculcate children with sort of cis heteronormativity and all this. It was like, come on.
What about indoctrinating them with, like, good novels?
Yeah, good novels. That would be great, wouldn't it?
When I was at school, we read Things Fall Apart. It's an African novel, and it was a really eye-opening experience to a part of the world and a different time. That's what novels do. They transport you.
Yes, exactly.
But the idea that one is worthier than the other is ridiculous.
Yeah, and, if we're focusing so much on group identity when it comes to literature, we're missing what is important about literature.
That it speaks universal truth, it connects to the human experience, and, it shouldn't just be focused on who's...
It's mad, isn't it? OK, we'll get a question now from Jasmine. Where's Jasmine? Oh.
Ishmael.
It's Ishmael. As I say, I'm just guessing tonight, and you're going to have to go with it. All right, Ishmael, what's your question?
He looks like a jazzman, to be honest.
I'm Ishmael. Yeah, the question is, should provocative posters be censored?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one, because coming from a comedic background, the Edinburgh Fringe, of course, just started the other week, and there have been all these posters being put up, and they've been taken down, and some performers have been, and some producers are getting in trouble because, well, things like there was a bare torso with a feather on one of the posters. Disgusting. There were some bare buttocks on another poster. I mean, it's hardly kind of the Marquis de Sade. And the Fringe is meant to be quite edgy,
It's
right?
a fringe. It's literally the fringe. That's the whole idea. It's on what...
It's on the edge.
Yes, exactly.
But is this just suggestive that the Fringe has become really, really mainstream now?
Well, it's not mainstream, but it's self-censorious, and thank you. It's a real risk. And this is after last year, where you had Jerry Sadowitz basically being cancelled from his event, and very few...
We should say, if people don't know, Jerry Sadowitz, a very famous Scottish comedian and magician.
And very much on the fringe.
Very much on the fringe, very offensive, controversial act.
I recall he took his genitals out on stage.
Well, there was an element... He always gets his
There's
genitals
nothing
out,
wrong
right?
with that.
I do that on headliners.
You were just doing it in the interval. But the point is that very few comics actually stood up for him.
Yes, that's right.
And if we're going to see the same thing playing out here, it's just ever-increasing steps to seeing the lifeblood being taken out of what makes the Fringe great in the first place.
I don't kind of understand it, because I've seen genuinely shocking shows at the Fringe over the years.
And I'm grateful you came.
Yeah, it was a good show, Josh. It was really good. I mean, I was offended, deeply offended, but, you know, that's part of it. And why is it, if the Fringe is going to become puritanical, you know, if they're going to say, well, you know, if the shock horror, Jerry Sadowitz, used some offensive language and you know, exposed himself...
If you can't use colourful imagery in the arts, and where can you?
Well, exactly. Yeah. But also, when you have a comic of that standing, who's so respected, has his show cancelled.
Yeah.
You know, I mean...
It's unbelievable. It's
by the venue, by the way. Not by just all the activists. The venue themselves said he doesn't represent our values, that awful phrase, you know.
Of comedy.
Right, yeah, that's right. Yeah, unbelievable. He told too many jokes. Yeah. That was the problem. There's something really weird going on in the industry. And we had it at the Stand as well with Joanna Cherry. She's a politician who was doing a Q&A at the Stand Comedy Club. And because some members of staff, I think, complained and said, well, we don't like her views, they cancelled it. It was only legal action that got them to
the sad thing is that the Stand is one of the best comedy clubs in the country. The Pleasance, I've done a couple of shows at the Pleasance. They're a great venue. And to see them destroying themselves, it's upsetting.
It's very, very sad indeed. OK, well, look, we've got a question now from, well, fingers crossed. Is it Julia?
Yay!
Yay! Julia, you shouldn't get a round of applause for that. For getting the name right. That's sort of like, that's the level of the show. OK, Julia, what's your question?
J.K. Rowling has recently been cancelled yet again by a museum in Seattle. How do we put an end to this misogyny?
Yeah, it's going on and on, isn't it? It's absolutely out of control. And this was the Museum of Pop Culture. Right. You would have thought Harry Potter is quite insignificant, I would say. And so, Julia, you describe it as misogyny. It is, isn't it? I mean, that could be the only explanation, right?
Yeah. There's no other explanation.
So then what do we... I mean, look... And this is a really weird one, because the museum, whoever the curator is, put out a statement. It was this really long essay accusing her of bigotry, hate, usual stuff, hate, transphobia, hatefulness, fat-shaming. Are the goblins, like, really thin or something?
No, there are people, the goblins, aren't they? That's the whole thing, like representing...
What do you mean, our people?
Hebes.
Well, that's what the trans activists say, but it's not...
They say that it's anti-Semitic.
I like being represented in media.
No, that's true. So the goblins, people said that's anti-Semitic because they remind us of Jewish people. Yeah. So isn't the anti-Semitism with the people who think that goblins look like Jewish people?
Yeah, but they did have yarmulkes on as well. So
they absolutely didn't, I should emphasise. Why fat-shaming, of all things?
Well, just why anything. That essay, I read it, it's absolutely ridiculous, written, of course, by he, they, which makes no sense as an identity for anyway. And
singular and plural.
Yeah, and so they're leaving the exhibits. They've got the scarf and they've got all the other geeky stuff.
Oh, they are they?
So they're leaving all of that stuff, but they're taking away her ownership of them. This all came from her brain.
Right.
She is the person who did this, wrote this as a single mum, wrote it in a cafe.
Now refer to her as you-know-who.
Yeah, has donated millions to charity, has single-handedly increased literacy amongst young people. It's absolutely bonkers that she's held up as this hate figure when all she's done is put good out into the world.
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. I think that's a fantastic thing to say. And I'm...
Oh, that gets a cut.
Yeah, that does. And I'm getting a bit sick of it as well. I mean, because I kind of think, like, exactly what you said, because she hasn't actually said anything offensive or transphobic or bigoted, it's a collective fantasy that these people are engaged in. It's absolutely
Ironically.
insane. Yeah, ironically, exactly. Really, really outrageous. OK. Well, after the break on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be talking about woke libraries. You won't want to miss that.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. One of the strangest developments of the culture war has been the rise of authoritarian librarians. It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Surely librarians are there to support education and to enable the dissemination of literature and knowledge. But this week, it was reported that the library service in Calderdale Council has been hiding books by feminists such as Helen Joyce and Kathleen Stock. The Labour-run council confirmed that although these books would still be in the catalogue and they could be requested, they were, quote, not visible on the library shelves. This is very odd. Now, I've read the books in question by both Helen Joyce and Kathleen Stock, and they are rigorous, intelligent and important studies concerning one of the key issues of our time. And yet these librarians are treating them as though they are toxic, as if members of the public who happen upon them while browsing might somehow be instantly corrupted. And yet we shouldn't really be surprised at all. The rise of woke librarians, however ludicrous that sounds, is a real thing. Now, I should say from the outset that I have nothing against librarians. Some of my best friends are librarians. But there is something about the profession that seems to attract the kind of paternalistic Pharisee who believes that it's their job to protect others from wrongthink. Let me give you some other examples. So a few years ago, it was reported that the former poet laureate Ted Hughes was included on a watch list created by the British Library because of a family connection with a slave owner. Turns out the connection was false, and the library issued an apology. But why was the foremost library in the UK creating this kind of watch list in the first place? Well, it was because in the wake of the killing of George Floyd, the library had commissioned what they called a decolonising working group, which decided that they should review the collections and draw up a list of any authors with problematic pasts. This same group also claimed that the library's main building was a monument to imperialism because it looked a bit like a battleship. I'm not even joking. And in 2021, the Waterloo Region District School Board in Canada identified and removed books that were considered, quote, harmful to staff and students. At the same time, other school libraries in Canada were disposing of copies of Harper Lee's novel To Kill a Mockingbird and Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale following complaints about, quote, racist, homophobic or misogynistic language and themes. And then there was the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, which removed copies of William Golding's Lord of the Flies on the grounds that the themes of the book were, quote, outdated and too focused on white male power structures. Had they even read the book? If Lord of the Flies really is a comment on white male power structures, it can hardly be said to be an advertisement. And then, of course, there's the whole trigger warning phenomenon. When archivists at Homerton College in Cambridge were engaged in a project to upload their collection of children's literature to the internet, they decided to flag a number of books with trigger warnings, books such as Little House on the Prairie and The Water Babies, and various books by Dr. Seuss. And the archivists said they wanted to make their digital collection, quote, less harmful in the context of a canonical literary heritage that is shaped by and continues a history of oppression. But books by Dr. Seuss aren't oppressive or harmful, even if they do contain outdated racial stereotypes. They were written a long time ago, and readers understand that. Of course, that hasn't stopped the estate of Dr. Seuss from withdrawing a number of titles from sale altogether. You can't even buy them anymore. But the most revealing aspect of this story from Cambridge is a statement that the archivists at Homerton College put out. They said it would be a, quote, dereliction of our duty as gatekeepers to allow such casual racism to go unchecked. Gatekeepers. Now, I thought they were meant to be custodians, not gatekeepers. And this is what is known as saying the quiet part out loud. Because really, all of this behaviour is edging towards censorship. For librarians and archivists to apply warnings to books or to hide them from the public, it's for them to say, we don't think these books are good for you. We don't trust you to read these books and not to pick up some bad ideas. We must protect you from their influence. In other words, they're treating the public like a parent treats a small child. And we shouldn't stand for it. Even the application of trigger warnings is a problem in of itself. True, the books aren't being censored, but a trigger warning buys into the false belief that words and violence are the same thing. It implies that these books are dangerous and in the wrong hands could cause trouble. And it's not just libraries. Increasingly, we're seeing museum staff attempting to protect the public from artefacts that they're meant to display. So last November, the Wellcome Collection in London shut down its key exhibit, one which dated from the 17th century, because it perpetuated, quote, a version of medical history that is based on racist, sexist and ableist theories and language. Now, we all know that ethical standards change over time and that people from the past held different views from us, often views that we would consider objectionable. So why don't museum curators understand this too? Why is a museum preventing us from seeing artefacts from the past when they should be facilitating access? Why is it that so many art galleries now insist on adding little labels next to paintings by great masters to say how much they disapprove of their values, as though the writers of these little sermons would have thought any differently if they had been born hundreds of years ago? I don't care whether you disapprove of Hogarth's attitudes towards minorities. I just want to appreciate his work without having these soft-witted Puritans breathing down my neck. What we're seeing here is ideological capture. It's the same reason why the Catholic Church created an index of forbidden books, which it kept updated for 400 years, right up until 1948. It's the same reason why Mary Whitehouse wanted certain TV shows banned back in the 1960s. It's the same reason why the BBC has censored scenes of old comedy shows such as Fawlty Towers on the BBC streaming service. It's the same reason why staff at publishing houses revolt when there's a new book coming out by Jordan Peterson or J.K. Rowling or some other problematic author. And when the authors aren't as well known as Peterson or Rowling, the staff often get their way. And if you don't think any of this is authoritarian, what about the time when the body in charge of elementary and secondary schools in southwestern Ontario authorised the ritualistic burning of books if they contained outdated stereotypes in what they described as a flame purification ceremony? Almost 5,000 books, including copies of Tintin and Asterix, were removed from shelves and were destroyed or recycled, because of course only the most progressive people in history have ever burned books. It sounds preposterous, but the proliferation of activists in libraries, museums, schools, publishing houses, the arts and the media makes complete sense when one considers that the devotees of this new woke religion have a vested interest in controlling the limits of acceptable thought. To use their own words, they are the gatekeepers. But as adults in a civilised and liberal society, we don't need to be coddled, particularly by people whose capacity for critical thinking has been stunted by ideology. They say it's for our own good, but what tyrant in history hasn't made a similar claim? So enough with the woke librarians. If activists are hiding books from you, the very best thing you can do is seek those books out and read them. These petty little authoritarians will do anything to control your speech and your thoughts. Don't let them get away with it. Now, Elon Musk has said that X, formerly known as Twitter, will pay the legal bills of anyone who is treated unfairly by their employer for their activity on his social media platform. Musk told users this morning that financial assistance from his platform would have no limits. That's quite a claim. So to discuss this, I'm joined by the founder of the Free Speech Union, Toby Young. Toby, thank you for coming. This is quite an astonishing tweet. Well, we say tweet. We're not calling them tweets anymore. X's or whatever they're called. Right. So Elon Musk seriously thinks that he can support all of these people that have been cancelled for liking tweets or for posting certain tweets. Is he in earnest?
Well, he seems to be in earnest. I mean, I think we need a bit more clarity. I mean, potentially this is game-changing news. The Free Speech Union has gone to bat for dozens of people. I checked today, 4 dozen people in total who've got into trouble with their employer or with their university for something they've said on Twitter, something perfectly legal, but which the authorities have disapproved of, or merely like to tweet. For instance, we're currently looking after a best-selling children's author, Gillian Phillip. I think she's been on your show before. She lost her job when she included in her Twitter bio the hashtag #IStandWithJK Rowling. That was enough to get her fired, and we're helping her bring a legal case against her former employer, and we're currently fundraising for that. And anyone watching this that wants to contribute to her fundraiser, I've just put something on the Free Speech Union's Twitter account @SpeechUnion, which will enable them to make a donation. Every little counts. But so this is potentially a game changer. But I think we need some clarity. Does he mean just from now on?
Yes, or Twitter as it was.
Or Twitter as it was. And if he means Twitter as it was, does he mean to go back beyond April 2022 when he bought it? Presumably not, because he doesn't want to take liability for things people said on the platform when he didn't own it, had no involvement in it.
But even if it is from posts that are being liked, even from this point onward, that's a major step forward, because corporations and companies seem to think that they can just treat people however they want for their political viewpoints. And, you know, as you say, what Gillian Phillips said was not just legal, but a view shared by the majority of the public.
Absolutely. It's critical that we do try and do whatever we can to stop this inquisition, this... we have people we call offence archaeologists going back through what people have said on their social media platforms, dating years to try and find stuff to be offended by that they can complain about. We need to stop this happening in British life. But we need more clarity. I mean, does he intend it to apply outside the United States, for instance, to the UK? And he can't really mean that he'll fund the law cases of anyone who gets into trouble with their employer. I mean, let's suppose you're an employee of Coca-Cola and you publish the secret recipe of Coca-Cola on Twitter. Presumably, if you get sued by the Coca-Cola Corporation, Musk is not going to underwrite your defence. But if he needs, what he needs, I think, is to be a bit clearer, set out what he means exactly, and if he wants any help in assessing which cases are deserving of his support, the Free Speech Union stands ready to step in. We've got a 4-person legal department. As I say, we looked after 48 people. We have a lot of expertise and experience in coming to the defence, including the legal defence of people who get into trouble for things they've said on Twitter. So if he wants any help in making this offer concrete, we stand ready to help.
Well, if Elon is watching, hopefully he is.
Do we call him Elon or Mr. Musk?
I think it's Elon to us.
OK.
But the thing is, he's thrown quite a grenade out there, because, I mean, he did put that tweet out, and then he did a sort of clarifying tweet saying he wasn't just going to sue, he would go after the Board of Governors of these things. I mean, the First Amendment really matters to Americans, and it does seem like corporations are sort of running roughshod over it. So this could be, you know, it would just take one or two big cases, wouldn't it, for corporations to start thinking, hang on a minute, maybe our employees are entitled to have whatever views they like.
Yeah, I mean, if you can somehow sue the directors of a company, if the head of HR tries to fire someone for saying something like, I stand with J.K. Rowling on Twitter, if you can make the directors and the non-executive directors liable, then that would put a stop to it, I think, overnight. I mean, just the fact that he said this, I think, will make a difference. People will think, crikey, if I now fire someone for saying something perfectly lawful on Twitter with which I happen to disagree, even if it's a mainstream view, I could be personally sued by the second richest man in the world. That'll give them pause for thought.
Absolutely. And it's also reassuring to have the second richest man in the world make this statement, because so often we hear from people, activists and commentators, this isn't a real thing. No one's being fired for tweets that they've posted or tweets that they've liked, etc. But you know from your experience with the Free Speech Union, that's just not true.
It is. There's no question it's true. And, you know, people keep thinking we've reached peak woke. You know, the pendulum has reached its apex and it's beginning to swing back. But we get more and more requests for help every week. We've currently got over 100 open cases. We've gone to bat for over 2,000 people since we founded the Free Speech Union 3 years ago. This is not in any way declining, and it affects people at every level of society. People focus on the J.K. Rowlings of this world, the Graham Linehans, and yes, they do get into trouble. People try and cancel them all the time and say horrible things about them. But actually, it's lower down the scale. We look after bus drivers, train drivers, dinner ladies, care workers. Those are the sorts of people that are at risk of losing their livelihood simply for expressing what they think on Twitter.
Even in the case of Graham Linehan, he's lost an awful lot of work because of this, you know. And you know, J.K. Rowling, as you say, is a very, very rich, and you know, her sales are still fantastic. But the truth is, you know, most of the people who are cancelled are, like you say, ordinary people who they don't have the means to defend themselves, do they?
That's right. That's why the Free Speech Union, I think, is so critical. Someone said the other day, a lawyer, if I hadn't started it, someone would have had to invent it, because there are so many ordinary people who don't have the resources or the expertise to defend themselves, who suddenly find their world collapsing, their careers turn into a dumpster fire. They don't know who to turn to. And luckily, we're there. We can step in. We can help them. We can hold their hand. If necessary, we can help them sue their employers. We can guide them through the incredibly bureaucratic and complicated investigation processes. We can make sure they are given some kind of due process. And more often than not, if you push back in this well-organised way with a lot of experience, a lot of legal advice, we've got 50 people on our Legal Advisory Council, if you push back robustly, the other side will back down. They'll back off.
And that's really heartening to hear, that they do back away when they're faced with people who know what they're talking about.
They're bullies, so if you stand up to them, they back down.
That's fantastic. So given, you know, assuming that Elon Musk doesn't step in with all this money, how can people support the Free Speech Union or join the Free Speech Union?
Well, if you go to the Free Speech Union's website, which is freespeechunion.org, it only costs as little as £2.40 a month. £2.49 a month is the starting price to join. If you want to join for a year, it's about $49.95. If you're on benefits, you're a veteran, you work in the emergency services, it's only $24. So it's really cheap. And if you do get into trouble, the value of the support you get from us is worth far more. It's like an insurance policy, but it's also a way of expressing your support and a way of supporting people who get into trouble, even if you don't think you're going to get into trouble yourself.
Yeah, well, I think it's an incredibly important thing, Toby, that you're doing. So thank you so much for talking about it today.
Thank you.
And there's more still to come on Free Speech Nation, but here's some more weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So we have seen quite a few showers across the UK for many today, though it has been dry for some. And as we look towards the new week, this area of high pressure will just come across the UK very briefly, bringing some settled weather across the south. But back to tonight's weather, and showers will slowly ease, becoming more confined to northern and western areas. Clear spells elsewhere combined with light winds will make for quite a cool night tonight. So temperatures in rural areas dropping into mid or even low single figures. It will make for a fresh but bright start to the new week with plenty of sunshine around, though we will start to see that cloud bubbling up, allowing showers to develop through the morning. Showers will be mostly across northern areas. They might just creep into East Anglia for a time, with that high pressure keeping things mostly dry across the south. We're feeling pretty pleasant in the sunshine with highs of 22 or locally 23 in the southeast. Now, as we go into Tuesday, an area of low pressure moves in from the west. Nothing as developed as what we saw on Saturday, but will bring quite a bit of cloud, rain and drizzle, especially to western areas. A drier and brighter day across the north. And as we look towards midweek, that drier and more settled weather looking to stay around with those temperatures on the rise.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
So after the break on Free Speech Nation, we'll be discussing British rowing's decision to ban transgender athletes from women's events. Don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. It has been reported this week that British rowing will no longer allow trans women to take part in the women's category. Until now, transgender athletes have been able to compete for Great Britain in elite British female rowing races if they can prove their testosterone serum levels were below 5 nanomoles per litre. By this new ruling, British rowing joins cycling, swimming, athletics and triathlon in adopting similar regulations. Fiona McAnina, Director of Sport for Fair Play for Women, joins us this evening. Fiona, thanks for coming. So, it looks like there's a long list of sporting bodies that are now coming around to this point of view, that having trans-identified male people in women's sports is obviously unfair. How did it take so long?
Well, I think what happened is that a few trans-identifying males demanded that sports find a solution for them, and sports tried to do that, and they did not think about the impact on women. I mean, what they forgot is the reason we have a female category in all of these sports is for female bodies. Otherwise, we wouldn't have female sport at all. So why did it take so long? Well, after they made those rules, women were afraid to object. And we've been working on this for several years now, and we're still hearing from people who are afraid to object. You know, there's great progress. You've named some of the big sports, but there are a lot more sports that are still, and even athletics at grassroots level, still letting males turn up and say, I'm a woman and I belong.
No, it's strange. I mean, I spoke to Maria Maucci on this show, and she talks about how when it comes to elite sport, it's a matter of seconds here and there. You work tirelessly to close those gaps. But if you have someone who's been through male puberty, the advantage is insurmountable. It just is. And it just feels so strange that the people in charge of these bodies didn't see that intuitively to begin with.
Well, everybody knows. Everybody in sport knows. If you have male and female categories, that's proof that you know.
Yes.
And so the question is, why did they think some people with male bodies needed to be allowed to come into the female category? That's very hard to answer.
Well, some activists have said, but, you know, some women are much bigger and stronger than other women. Some men are much bigger and stronger than other men. So, therefore, these designations of male and female are arbitrary.
Well, yeah, the bigger, stronger women tend to win in the women's category, but they wouldn't win in the men's category.
Right. Exactly. So what's happened with British rowing specifically? I believe there's British rowing and world rowing have come to the same sort.
World rowing have not yet made this move.
Oh, right.
So British rowing have been bold and courageous in taking a lead, just like triathlon did, where world triathlon hasn't moved yet either. And it's because it's so obvious that it is not fair to women and girls in the sport to have to compete against male bodies.
Yes.
World Rowing are going to be discussing this in the coming months. We hope they'll do the right thing.
Do you feel like the UK is kind of taking the lead on this, rather?
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about that. And even at the world level, people who have been involved in taking a lead are British, like Lord Coe, Seb Coe, who's taken the lead in world athletics.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think it's partly, honestly, Andrew, because we are more able to speak up about this. And it's partly a language thing, too. You know, the free speech is a really big part of it, because a lot of people don't realise when you say trans women, that actually those are male people.
Yes.
People get confused.
It is confusing.
And we have to be able to talk about male and female. And even when we have meetings with governing bodies of sport, sometimes that makes people uncomfortable. They don't want to hear it.
It's interpreted as transphobic. It's as though you're being hateful if you don't affirm. But, you know, that's not what's going on here, is it?
No. I mean, we say, look, I don't know anything about anyone's identity. I don't know how they feel inside. But when someone runs onto a football pitch or jumps into a swimming pool, we know who's male and who's female. It's bodies that play sport, not identities.
It's very interesting that sometimes it just takes particular cases to wake people up to the problem. The Leah Thomas case, I think, is very interesting. So a biological male who was swimming with the men's team for a long time and coming, what was it, 500th in the rankings, overnight suddenly became the #1 swimmer because he identified as female. And there's images of Leah Thomas right there. And, of course, we saw Leah Thomas towering over those female competitors on the podium. And that image, I think, is just so striking that it would have been impossible then for people not to wake up to the problem.
Well, you say that, Andrew, but that was known about for 6 months before that championship happened, and they still allowed Leah Thomas to take the national championship, college championship in America, defeating 3 Olympic silver medalists in that final. So everybody knows, everyone can see, and one can only conclude it's because they've decided that the feelings of certain male people are more important than the impact on females. And that's what we're not having anymore.
So what can people do now? I mean, you're with Fair Play for Women, so you've been obviously campaigning about this tirelessly. But what can everyday people do who aren't involved with campaign groups?
Yeah, the biggest thing is to raise the alarm. And that can be either in your own sport, speak to coaches, speak to club managers. If it's school sports, speak to people in school. It takes a bit of courage to do that, but if everybody does it, it'll be all right.
Because they're going to be accused of being bigots, of being hateful. They're going to have all these slurs thrown in their direction, and it is very intimidating.
Yeah. Well, that may happen, you're absolutely right, but on the other hand, the vast majority of people believe that female sport should be for female people.
Yes.
And so if you speak up, generally, you'll get a sympathetic hearing from people in the sport. Then we have to talk to the governing bodies, and that's what we do. So we also want people to contact us and tell us the examples that they've experienced where a girl or a woman is put off her own sport or doesn't feel comfortable in her own changing rooms or is losing prizes because there are males in her category. And we want to know about those.
Fiona McAnina, thanks so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it. So, after the break on Free Speech Nation, it's time for this week's social sensations and our unfiltered dilemmas with comedians Josh Harry and Jonathan Cogan. Don't go anywhere.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So every week we dedicate this part of the show to the world of social media. So we're going to start with this one. British Airways had to think fast following a fridge malfunction on one of their flights. OK, so flight attendants bought KFC buckets and handed out one chicken leg per passenger. There we go. OK, what do you make of this, Josh?
1 chicken leg. Why not 2? That's unbelievable. That's so stingy, isn't it?
That's got to be Ryanair.
This is British Airways, yeah, Ryanair.
No, this is British Airways. I think this is British Airways.
No, Ryanair would just do one of those popcorn bits like that.
OK, well...
pretty stingy.
That apparently has gone viral. But next up is this video. This is BBC host Peter Levy, who struggled to keep a straight face. Let's have a look.
Now, it's estimated that the bill to repair Lincoln's glory hole will be anything between £60,000 and £100,000. The footpath has been closed since February, and Lincolnshire County Council have blamed difficulties in accessing the site.
Now, obviously, we're not going to clarify what that means, but...
Josh and I actually met at one.
OK. It's interesting, though, is that, like, if he could have just styled it out, if he could have kept a straight face, no one would have, I think, even spotted what had been said.
Well, he's someone who's obviously very familiar with glory holes.
Yeah. All the memories came flooding back. Good times.
It's a shame. Sometimes when you can't keep a straight face when you're live on air, I feel for the man.
Yeah, so I've never seen you corpse. Oh, you've laughed, but then I've never seen you just completely lose it.
No. Well, some of us are professional. Anyway, we're going to move on to him. I was only joking. Didn't mean that. He's a lovely guy. So here we have GB News' own Rory Smith earlier today. So whatever the BBC do, we can do better.
Competitors in Latvia, as well as Lithuania and Estonia, grunted and bellowed in a battle to be named the champion stag caller. They were scored on their ability to imitate the animals in different categories. Like we call him a deer. The winner will compete at the European stag calling competition in Poland. I really should watch these clips before letting you watch them. This is GB News across the UK on TV in your car.
Fair play to Rory. I mean, that was ridiculous.
That was a little bit too much. I don't know why Boy George was competing.
That's such a shame, but there's an example. Sorry, you know, it's tough. It's tough. I would have laughed in that situation, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's quite erotic as well, the whole thing.
I'm sorry?
It was...
Your parents are here!
Your parents are in the audience.
I met them at the Glorious... No,
Jonathan Cogan.
I had Pepsi.
Is that why you're all...
That's the guy's name at the... No,
OK, look, let's move on before this gets out of control. This is the part of the show where we talk through your unfiltered dilemmas. So our first dilemma is from Stacey. Stacey says, I've just started dating this guy. I asked him if he would come and watch the Barbie film with me, but he said, no, I'm just going to read the script online. It'll only take 20 minutes. Is it time to give him the boot? Can you get the script of Barbie online? I wouldn't have thought you'd be able to do that.
I reckon someone's probably typed it up by now. Probably audio recorded it and then typed... That's got to be there, right?
Yeah, but I mean, that's not the experience of the film.
I know.
It's not quite the same as if you just...
Either he's a very efficient guy who just likes to maximise his time spent on things, or he just hates the stupid film for girls. I don't know. Maybe
it's a stupid film for girls.
Not mine.
Have you seen the film?
No, I haven't. But me and my sister were talking about it today, and it almost came to blows. So yeah.
So you're not going to go and see it?
No, I might do. I don't know. Have I got time for that? Yes. Do I want to see it? Maybe. Have I seen it twice? Yes.
There we go. Josh, I mean, that seems a bit, well, I don't know, churlish, just to say I'm not going to go and see the film.
I think he's making a good call there.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you seen it?
And I have seen it.
Any good?
Right?
No, it's not good.
Oh, OK.
It's a total mess.
Is it misandrist?
Yes, it's a little bit of that, but it's just it's some funny bits and it's also a little bit boring and long. And
all right, not a recommendation from Free Speech Nation for Barbie, I'm afraid, but we've got a dilemma now from Chris, and Chris says, my best man ruined my stag and ruined everyone's time. I feel like we won't be friends after the wedding. Do I strip him of his status? That sounds like an odd relationship.
Well, that's because as a stag do, he took him to see Barbie.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
What do you do? I mean, did you have a stag do before you got
I did have a stag do. There's a few people who are still there.
Right.
They're Peruvian prison.
Yeah.
I've never been to a stag do. I wouldn't know what...
Really?
No, I wouldn't know what to
I
do
almost
with
want to get remarried just to invite you along.
Really?
Sorry.
They're quite raucous, aren't they? So you're supposed to misbehave at a stag do, so why would he be upset about that? That doesn't make sense.
I don't, but maybe things have changed.
Maybe you went too far, like, you're not meant to, like, kill the hookers, you're meant to just...
For God's sake, Jonathan! You're so dark in everything you say. OK.
I'm full of anger, and I don't know why.
Right, Jonathan's parents, you've failed. We're going to move on to our final dilemma. This week is from Abby. Abby says, I mentioned to my workmates that I like attending bottomless brunches, and now they seem to think I'm an alcoholic. I'm so embarrassed. What do I do? So it's a bottomless brunch. You don't drink alcohol, though, do you? A bottomless brunch, you eat as many
No,
finger
you
food.
drink alcohol. That's the point of it, yes.
But it's a brunch.
Yes.
You're meant to have, like, omelettes and
Look
stuff.
at you, you're so happy.
Well, no, I'm
You've discovered your future. This is the best thing ever!
I've never heard of that. I didn't realise that's what you do.
Yes, of course it is. It's great.
So, should you be embarrassed?
Well, it's the most middle-class thing I've ever heard of, so I'm kind of on board. But
A bottomless brunch?
Yeah, I actually got kicked out for going to a bottomless brunch for being naked from the waist down. It's a very, that's a real elbow swing at that one. No, what do I think? I'm meant to get hammered. It's bottomless. The whole idea is you can drink as much as you possibly can.
Is that right?
That is the premise of it.
Well, you know what? You learn something every day. I did not know about that, but I'm going to attend a bottomless brunch, Abby, next week, and I'll let you know how I get on. But look, thanks so much for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when the Great Western Railway decided to police the internet for its passengers. Sinn Féin embraced gender ideology, and Elon Musk said he would come to the rescue of the cancelled. Well, we'll have to see if that happens. Thank you so much to my panel, Josh Howie and Jonathan Cogan, and to my guests, of course, James Esses, Anna Lutvi, Kit Clarenberg, Toby Young, and Fiona McAnena. And if you want to join us live in the studio and you can be part of our wonderful audience, you can easily do that. Just go to www.sroaudiences.com. The address is right there on the screen right now. Stay tuned for the brilliant Mark Dolan tonight, presented by Leo Kirst tonight. That's next. Don't forget that Headliners is on every night at 11 p.m. That's the late night paper preview show where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. Josh Howie is going to be hosting that one tonight. Thanks ever so much for watching Free Speech Nation. See you next week.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.
Good evening, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So we have seen quite a few showers across the UK for many today, though it has been dry for some. And as we look towards the new week, this area of high pressure will just come across the UK very briefly, bringing some settled weather across the south. But back to tonight's weather, and showers will slowly ease, becoming more confined to northern and western areas. Clear spells elsewhere combined with light winds will make for quite a cool night tonight. So temperatures in rural areas dropping into mid or even low single figures. It will make for a fresh but bright start to the new week with plenty of sunshine around, though we will start to see that cloud bubbling up, allowing showers to develop through the morning. Showers will be mostly across northern areas. They might just creep into East Anglia for a time with that high pressure